We have a problem with certain sections of society saying that if these teenage girls liked it at the time, they were doing most of the flirting, or they were even forthcoming in these situations, that they then can't grow up into their adulthood and look back and start labelling it as abusive and exploitative. Now, I strongly disagree with this for many reasons. We have recently released a video on our Something to Say platforms from Leila, which will help us get into this discussion a bit deeper. I'm not going to talk too much in the intro here like I usually do. Let's just get straight into the video and get into this.
Hi, I'm here to share a bit of my story with what happened to me when I was growing up. So when I was 13 years old, I was going on a family trip for my uncle's 30th birthday, and the family were going, and we were going to Bruges. On that trip, I had obviously my whole family there, and one of my other uncles, who was married into the family and was Uncle Brian, decided to spend a lot of time with me and I guess give me attention that I wasn't used to. On that trip, he would put his arm around me and, just make me feel special. And being a 13-year-old, I kind of enjoyed it and was a bit unsure about what this was.
Completely understandable. First of all, 13-year-old girl being showered with attention. Naturally, our human nature as a teenager thrives on attention. In fact, our whole childhood thrives on attention. You only need to see how young children behave with, watch me, look at me. And they need that praise. They want that praise. It's, probably how the human psyche has evolved and developed. And then going into puberty, into your teenage years, it's no different at all. So just to start with, we can understand the reaction that Leila had to Uncle Brian, who was married into the family. So he's not a blood relative. He's someone new coming from outside. We're just setting the scene here so that everybody can understand. And she, her body and her hormones and her dopamine levels are responding to the attention. It's nice. What's the problem? So there's nothing out of what we can understand here, and it's just important for us to set the foundations.
I didn't live in the same area as him at this point. I was living in Leicestershire with my parents and two sisters, and my mum and dad were actually going through a breakup, so we did spend quite a lot of time going up to Yorkshire where Uncle Brian lived and my grandparents and the rest of my family. During these trips, he just kind of gave me, again, more attention, and every time I went back to Leicester, he would call me up, see how I was. And I guess making me feel special, and spending that time communicating with me.
Okay, two things here then. So we understand that Leila's parents had recently separated, causes a vulnerability in the family home, causes a vulnerability in the child's mind as well. And I'm confident to say that because I come from divorced parents, and we know that creates many challenges in a child's brain. And anybody that says they don't think that divorcing or splitting up a partnership that are bringing up a child creates any problems for a child and they get over it and they get used to it, then most of the people that say that are people that are not coming from broken homes. It causes problems, no doubt about it. Leila now is vulnerable in the way that there isn't two parents in the home to check up on her. There's only one. So straight away, that makes Leila an easier target. I'm sorry if that offends you if you are split from your partner and looking after children. It's just facts, in my opinion, but I'm confident enough to say that. And so Uncle Brian probably sees that and wants to pounce on that, but also maybe he gets a thrill out of that vulnerability from Leila. So the exploitation of that is something that arouses him even more so compared to if she wasn't in a vulnerable position as she is. And the other question that we want to ask is, we would love of Leila to have recognised that this was unusual and uncomfortable or not exactly correct, which actually, on second thoughts, I believe she does feel that. She does know that as the 13-year-old that she was, but she didn't feel like speaking out about it. I also understand that. Why would you is one question. I don't want to be disruptive is another thought that a teenager may have. And there's plenty other thoughts a teenager may have in this situation. It would be wrong for us to assume that it's highly likely that a teenager would come forward even if they felt uncomfortable about something like Leila did in her situation. Let's continue.
We moved up to Yorkshire when my mum and dad finally split up, and this was the year after, so I was 14. And it's really difficult to know the timeframes of when things happened. You know, I have memories of, well, we slept in the conservatory, for instance, so it can't have been winter. It must have been warm enough to be able to do that. So that was obviously summer, and this was something that I spoke through in my interview with the police. So we moved up to Yorkshire, and again, we're spending a lot of time there. I used to go and have sleepovers at his house, and my auntie Sandra was there, who's my mum's sister, with my sister Rachel, and we would do that quite often from memory. Like, we'd go away for weekends and stuff, and I'd always go out with Brian, and Rachel would spend time with Sandra, and just, you know, I was with Brian quite often, and I think to me in my head I was like, I must be in a relationship with this person, it's weird, but obviously in his mind he was just grooming me. So the abuse, which was sexual, went on for I would say like 2 year, maybe longer span. It's just hard to actually remember when things happened. I remember, you know, turning 16 and I was wanting to go out with boys my own age and things, and I remember ending it with him and saying, I don't want to do this anymore. And he said to me, well, I'm going to have to go sleep with a prostitute now. Please come over one more time. And I was like, no, that's it.
Okay, so sexual abuse started at 14, approximately. And for anybody from those sections of society that is thinking, if you don't know, how can you not know how old you were? How can you not have more definitive information about where you were, and like what do you really remember in chronological order from those ages? Very, very little. So let's just like think about that, like from a realistic point of view. So around 14, went on for 2 years, and it's sexual abuse. By definition, it's sexual abuse because it's an adult on a minor, and we have laws in this country that protect minors by saying that they cannot give consent to adults to be involved with them in any sexual way whatsoever. That's the age of consent law that we put down. And that's there to protect those young people and say to all adults that you cannot go near anyone that's under 16 or approach them or interact with them in a sexual way because they cannot give you consent. That is the rules that we put down, and that's to protect them. You are not allowed to do that. You will be in trouble if you do so. So Leila explains this as sexual abuse, but for some it may be a little confusing because she also uses the term relationship. She thought that she was in some form of relationship with this man, Uncle Brian. She was also 14, 15 and 16, growing into a young adult too, and she felt like it was a bit weird, but it just continued occurring. Should she have stopped it? She was a child. She was a young teenager. Brian should have never gone there. And we start to think about, well, what was she getting from being in that situation, if anything? And now it comes back to the point that I was trying to make at the start, well, that I made at the start in the opening of this podcast, which was certain sections of society saying that if these young teenage girls enjoyed it, they were flirting, they were forthcoming at the time, they cannot then in their adulthood look back at it and call it sexual abuse. That's wrong, because we use the word abuse because Uncle Brian abused Leila's youth, her vulnerability, and her lack of development as a person to be able to give consent in the first place. We are saying that unless you are 16 and above, you cannot give consent. So he abused her as a young teenager, as a minor, and exploited her to satisfy his sexual desire. That's why we call it abuse. But it just becomes really difficult for people to understand because we don't talk about this really in public. We think about sexual abuse always being violent and forceful. And my impression that I'm getting from this video is that isn't always the case, but it's still called abuse. And I just wanted to clear that up.
And again, it's like how many times it happened. I don't know. I can't put a number on it. And that's something the police asked me as well. So this was in like spanning from 2001 to 2004. And then that was that. I totally forgot about it. Didn't really cross my mind again. And I remember like before I turned 30, which was in 2017, end of 2017, I remember, like, I think it was the 2016 year, things coming out, and like there was Jimmy Savile, you know, all that kind of happened, and that was triggering things. There was a storyline on Hollyoaks where a girl was being groomed by her stepdad, and then in my head I was thinking, this doesn't seem right. And I was like, right, I need to do something. And I remember being at his house for Christmas in 2016, and he just like said to me to tidy something up, and I was like, no, you do it. And I just was rebelling a bit, I think, and I just avoided him. And then in 2017, I thought I need to speak to somebody. Like, I just need to get it out because I just can't continue like this. I was such an angry person. Like, I'd always been moody and angry, and like I never knew why. But now obviously it's all out, and kind of, you know, I went to court and stuff. I now understand why I was so annoyed and pissed off, because obviously I'd gone through that as a child and I'd buried it. But subconsciously, I was probably pissed off that it happened.
Oh, it's such a good point, because it is only when you get into your adulthood, when you have more life experience, you're more mature, your brain is better developed, that you can look back at these things and be like, you know what? Like, that was out of order. That was out of order. I was completely taken advantage of by somebody that knew that they shouldn't be doing this. Even if you take the law out of it, right? We've mentioned the law here and the age of consent, etc. Even if you take that out of it, the feelings of the fact when you look at yourself, when you think about yourself as a child, and you think that some adult has exploited you in some way for something perverse, it's like, hang on a minute, I'm pissed off about that. And I'm going to do something about that. And it really, you know, let's take somebody who, following something like this in their childhood, they buried it, which most people do. I was one of those people, and they continued their life, and they were successful in many ways, and a functioning adult. Then some people would say, well, you know, it didn't affect you that much, don't worry about it. But you know what, like, hang on a minute, no. Like, you're not just going to let these people walk around doing these things to children and not be annoyed about it, not take some action about it. And damn right we should take action against these people that are doing these things. For a number of reasons, but yeah, it's just powerful. It's powerful the way she's talking about it as well, because what really drew me to Leila's story, and we share many stories on Something to Say, the Something to Say platforms that I run. If you don't know about those, social media, it's Something to Say Official, and if you go to YouTube and type in Something to Say, but actually it's very difficult to find that channel. If you go to the description below, I'll link it there. Go and see all the stories. But Leila really struck me because she's so genuine about it. She's not hooked up on it anymore. She's processed it. You know, it's not. I'm sure it causes her many difficulties, but she's like, you know what? Let's just talk about this. And I've got a lot of time for that.
So in like the January 2017, I went to see a counsellor. I Googled and found one, and I was like, she looks nice, I'll go see her. And I went and I said, I just want to tell you. I don't want to tell anyone else. You know, I just want to tell somebody. And it came out, and I was just like, I felt so much better, and like a weight had been lifted, and it just then went, it just spiraled. So I got like confident. So a week after my counselling, I was at my sister's house, and two friends had come around having some drinks, and I remember just turning to my friend and saying, I've got something to tell you. She was like, what? And at this point I had a boyfriend, and she was like, have you cheated on your boyfriend? I was like, no, it's something worse. And I just said, I was abused by Brian as a kid. And she was like, what? Like, literally did not know what to do with it. And she said, you need to tell your sister. And I was like, oh, just don't. And then I said, you tell her. And she was like, no, you tell her. And then I said to Becca, my older sister, I was like, oh, I've got something to say. And I said, I was abused by Brian. And she said, I know. And I was like, what the fuck?
Whoa.
And as it came out more and more, like, as obviously family members found out, it was obvious. They were like, why did we not see the signs? Like, the behaviour with me and Brian, like, I was sitting on his knee and stuff, and he was doing all real lovey-dovey with me and things. They were like, oh my God, you look gorgeous. You know, just things that weren't normal to come from an uncle's mouth.
I think that's hindsight, though. I think at the time when these things are happening, what we're going to start doing, we're just going to start questioning every single thing that happens, thinking that it could be a terrible behaviour from someone. Like, we would run out of headspace if we lived our lives like that. I think in hindsight, you can always, what do they say? Join the dots together. I think with hindsight, yes, I think hindsight is a beautiful thing. It's a wonderful thing, but it is hindsight. At the time, no one really thought about it. It was Uncle Brian. He was really friendly, and he was interacting especially with Leila. But yeah, it was really cool to see her say, like, you know, when she first spoke to the counsellor, and then she just got this confidence to speak to someone else. Like, that's so great, and so many people go through that same process. Because before you start talking about it, it's almost like the fear has got you. But as soon as you release it and you break that silence, you get this level of confidence that leads you to say it again to someone else, and then that builds your next level of confidence, and then it just snowballs until the fear no longer cages you, I suppose.
So that started the process then. So this was the February time. I kept it a secret then. I said to Becca, like, she told me it was Sister Rachel, and I was like, we can't tell anybody. I'm not ready to deal with, like, what's next. And we kept it under wraps for a couple of months, really. Like, we were having to go to family dues, and my sisters were like, we need to cancel. I said, you can't cancel because then it'll raise suspicion. I said, I've had to live with this for how many years and carry on, so I'm sure we can until we decide what I'm going to do. And I remember going round to my auntie's house, so my mum's brother and his wife, and telling her, Jane, and she was like, you need to tell Peter. And I was like, fuck. So we told him, and I did it purposely when Sandra and Brian were out the country, so they couldn't go round and, like, confront Brian. But then when Brian got back, Peter had texted him and said, I need to see you. And he met him and he said, I know what you've done. And he was like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And Peter was like, the police. But at this point, I hadn't decided what I was going to do. But Brian went home that day and told Sandra, but we never found out what he told her. So then Sandra asked to see me. I never, and to this day, I wish I'd asked what he told her, because I still don't know to this day what he told her. And Sandra was like, right, I'll take you to police right now. And I said, I'm not ready to do anything. Just, you know, Brian took the control. I was controlling the situation and telling people as and when I wanted to. And he took that control out of, you know, my hands. So I was due to go on holiday to Vegas for like 3 weeks. And I was like, I'm going to go. I think it was 2 weeks, rather than 3. I was like, I'm going to go and have a think whilst I'm away what I'm going to do. So I went away and I was like, I think I need to go to the police. And anyway, I texted Sandra when I got back, and Sandra had started not talking to people when I was away, like just literally ignoring the family. I texted Sandra, I said, like, how are you? didn't reply to me. So I thought, do you know what? Fuck you. I'm going to the police. I'm trying to reach out to you. You're not bothering replying. So I was like, I'll take matters into my own hands. And I went to the police. And this was end of May 2017.
So look, can I just explain that going to the police is like your next level of I'll use the word bravery. I don't really like using the word bravery, but for this I'm going to use the word bravery, because that is not just okay, so I've told a few people and now I'm going to tell the police. It's like such a big step. That's the point I'm trying to make. Just for anybody that has not been through a situation of sexual abuse in their childhood, I just want to explain to you that is such a big step, going to the police, because it's a whole can of worms that you then haven't got control of. You don't know where this is going to go. Usually for historic cases, it's very unlikely to go anywhere. So you're going to put your heart into this. You're going to lay all your emotions on the table, and it's going to be a long, drawn out process again that may not be successful in the end. And you may wonder why you would do such a thing. And some of the reasons why you would do such a thing is because we need to get these people prosecuted. We need to get them on the sex offenders register so we can monitor what they're doing in person or online, what access they have to other children. And we need to send a message out to everybody that's committing this crime or thinking about committing this crime that we're not standing for it anymore. Enough is enough. If you commit this crime, you will be punished, and you will be punished severely. You will feel the full force of the law. And that's why going to the police and trying to prosecute these people, even though there's a little chance that of a successful prosecution, is a bold and brave and necessary step. But just to counter that in some way, that doesn't mean that if you don't go to the police that you are part of the problem, or you are what's the word I'm trying to look for here? If you don't go to the police, that you're a failure of some sort. That's not what I'm saying. Everybody is in their own journey. But prosecution or attempting prosecution has to be a very, very positive move, and I want to applaud everybody that's ever tried that.
And the process was disgusting, really. Like, I had to carry on my normal life, always chasing up, saying what's happening next, are we going to get anything sorted? They were like CPS reviewing it constantly. And the policewoman I dealt with, Claire, she was amazing. Like, I can't fault her. She was checking I was okay and everything, but the process was just so long. So we went to Magistrates Court, I think it was August 2018. They said it's too serious, you need to go to Crown Court. Went then, I want to say October 2018, and they said, right, you need to come to trial, and that will be March 2019. So bearing in mind, I reported it in May 2017, didn't go to court till March 2019. It was a week-long trial. When I reported it in 2017, the next day they came and picked me up and took me to a safe house to record my video, of all my evidence, which I've got a copy of. Don't know why I wanted a copy. I wanted it so I could watch it back if I ever want to. God knows why. And week-long trial in court. I had to go on the stand. I think it was the second day, because the first day they watched my video, and that was quite a long video, a few hours. And then they had called like 15 witnesses up. And then as it went on, each day they dropped majority of them. Because they realised that the case was so strong, they didn't need all these witnesses. They were trying to call our bluff, I think. And it was 8 counts he got done with, and it was like indecency with a child, and I can't remember the other one. But he couldn't get done for sex with a child because the laws had changed since like 2004, which I think is a load of shit. So he got sentenced to 5 years, but obviously that would be reduced to 2.5. So he served his 2.5, and he tried to appeal it. He tried to get a lesser sentence, which I was like, you're an idiot. You've been found guilty. The jury, literally, we broke for lunch on that Friday, and then came back into the court. 5 minutes later, was like, we're ready to go. So like an hour it took them to decide.
Okay, so 5 years, that he'll serve half of that. 2.5 years he will serve in total in prison. What are your thoughts on that sentencing for having sex with a 13-year-old girl? Now, I just need to make sure I don't go off on too much of a tangent, and I remember a point that I want to make a little bit later, but let's stick on the sentencing first. Now, we have many complications when it comes to sentencing. Many people who follow me will believe that it should be a life sentence if you have sex with anyone under the age of consent. It should just be a straight life sentence, because then that will deter people from doing it, some people from doing it at least, and that's enough. If you can stop some people from committing the crime, it's one positive move forward. But of course, putting people in prison for life has huge implications, especially financially. Also, there is not enough space in the prisons in this country to do that in the first place. And also, the crime just isn't taken that seriously. So we end up having these sentences of 5 years. Do you think that's a weak sentence or not? Put your comments in the comment section on this part of the video. I wonder if she may even be about to talk about this, but in my opinion, once a prison sentence, whatever it is that you were given, is served, I believe that you should be monitored for the rest of your life with what you do online, the job that you have, the access that you have to other children, and you should be on the sex offenders register, and that should involve this monitoring for the rest of your life. I just think that should be a standard. If you commit a sexual offence against a child, you should be on the sex offenders register for the rest of your life. I do not believe you should be there on there for a period of time. What sense does that make? You may not commit the crime for that period of time, but then later on you may do so, because the desire that you have towards minors will always be there in your head. I don't think you can ever knock that out of your head. I think it can be managed. I do think it can be managed, but I think we should monitor you for the rest of your life. The other point that I was wanting to make that I didn't want to go off on a tangent on was, damn it, and now I've completely forgotten. What was I talking about? Prosecution. Yes, I remember now. Terminology. Okay, so when this video came out on Something to Say, I also promoted it on my Jeremy Indica channels, because I'm trying to give people, let people know about the great work we're doing over at Something to Say. And I wrote a post about this particular story. I'm going to pull it up, I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to talk to you about the point that I want to make. 1 second. Okay, so here is the post. I'm reading this off Instagram, by the way. I wrote, Leila's uncle, her mum's sister's husband, was sentenced to 5 years in prison for having sex with her over a 2-year period when she was 14 years old. He's now been released after only serving half of that sentence, and she bumps into him regularly in the town that they live in. And then my post went on. Now, the thing that I focused on, which I actually summarised at the end of the caption, let me read that summary. And just before you go, I know that what Leila's uncle did technically cannot be called sex, because that's when something is consensual, and someone under the age of 16 cannot give consent to sex with an adult. So we call it rape. But many people will distance themselves and turn away from reading this post if I use that word in the opening paragraph, so I decided against it. I welcome your opinion on this, and if you feel a certain way about the decision. Now, it can't be called sex, because sex is between two consenting adults. Now, Leila here, I can't remember how she pronounced her name. Leila. I think I've used different ways of pronouncing it during this podcast. But Leila says sex, and that's her thing. That's her. It's her story. She can talk about it how she wants. But from a technical point of view, we call it rape. Now, rape is penetration. I'm going to pull up the definition of rape so we don't get this incorrect. 1 second. Okay, so this is from the Metropolitan Police. The legal definition of rape is when a person intentionally penetrates another's vagina, anus or mouth with a penis without the other person's consent. So that definition will mean that the thing that what Uncle Brian was doing to Leila is called rape, because it was penetration without the other person's consent. Leila was under the age of 16, so legally she cannot give consent. So rape is how we label it. We do not label it as sex. But the problem is, as I wrote in this post, this Instagram post, is that as soon as you use the word rape, people turn away from it. They don't want to engage with it. So that's why I use that term there. And also, I feel like all of society think of rape as someone pinning someone down and forcing them and hurting them and punching them and pushing them and them screaming, "Get off me!" It's like some intense violent act. When that's the wrong conception of rape, because it's not always like that. I'm sure some of it is like that, but it's not always like that. This story is a good example of that. And if we use the word rape, people think that it's one thing because that's the only thing that they think of when they think of that word, when it's so much more complicated than that. And then when we use the word sex and we say that Uncle Brian was having sex with Leila, it gives you, for me personally, it just gives you a more fuller picture of what actually was going on. And it makes you think that that is actually disgusting that that man would do that. And I think it just allows us to relate to it a little bit more. But terminology is important. So I don't know what way to go with this. I don't know what direction to go with this. Please, what do you think? Let's get back to the story.
I had to give a victim statement to the police, obviously to be read out in court. And I was like, I'll read it, but I was like, I can't. It was just so overwhelming. So they read that out, and then they were discussing obviously the sentencing and stuff. And I was like, I need to get out. And I walked out. And all he was doing was apparently sat like this when they were reading out his, verdict and how long he was going to go to prison. So bearing in mind he was a chief inspector in the police, untouchable, living a life cocky shit, like the captain of a golf club. Like, look at me.
She's got a cool energy about her, hasn't she? I love the attitude,
He was literally torn down. So he came out of prison, so 2021, like September time. Bearing in mind we had a year of COVID and he was in prison. Like, we all were basically in prison outside, living in COVID. I bump into him occasionally because he lives locally. God knows why I stayed local. One thing to point out as well, after I reported it to police, none of the family saw Sandra ever again. She still sees my grandma, which pisses me off because I'm real close to my grandma. And I'm like, how are you okay with this, grandma? But grandma's 90 and I try not to obviously cause any family problems. But, yeah.
Wow, that just gives you an idea of the complications that never ever go away when it comes to this crime, especially within the family.
Didn't hear from Sandra ever again. So bearing in mind, she's got me and my two sisters. I've got a cousin, George, who's 14. She's got a brother, she's got a sister. We're a big family. She's lost us all. But she still sees Brian's son and daughter, so I hope that gives her some kind of, nice feeling that she sees a paedophile's family rather than her own blood. But I have released a book discussing all this. It's called It Happened to Me Too.
Oh, good on you.
If you go on Amazon and search Leila Ives, my name, which we'll put a link for if anyone wants to buy that. And it's just sharing my story about it all, because in the process of all of this, I also got diagnosed with MS, which there is research into trauma triggering that. So yeah, there's that as well. But more than happy, reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook, whatever. If my story, touches any of you, you think I can help, more than happy to do so. I think the key is just, I guess, being there for other people as well. I will one day write a second book as well, because so much has happened since my life. It's just like so much has happened. I've been dealt so many bad cards, but I guess you've got to try and make the most out of it and not see the negatives, I guess. But don't know really if I've shared much here which is helpful, but just a bit about the process and how you can bury things for so many years. Like, I buried it for like 16 years and thought things were normal. I carried on my life as normal and was seeing him and was still so close to him, but then one day something flipped, and I think that's quite normal. So do speak out if you feel that it will help you. Don't be afraid. You know, there's so many of us out there who are abuse survivors, and we should all stand together and just be strong, I guess. So thank you.
Amazing. That's so cool. It's so cool. Like I said, I love her attitude. She's strong. She's talking about it openly. She's facing it. She's done something about it. She's written a book about it, which we will link in the description below. And I just think it's inspiring for other people who are on the start of their journey, or any stage of their journey actually, to see someone like Leila sit in front of her mobile phone and record herself telling her story for the betterment of other people, to help other people. So something to say, please go check out those platforms. Let me tell you a little bit about the kind of vision myself and the team have for that platform. We want that to be a household name. We want it to be something that everybody knows about. We want that to be something that everybody interacts with in a certain way. We have clothing off the back of it. We have the YouTube channel. We have all the social media platforms. Now, when I started Something to Say, the reason why I started it is because I got so much confidence through sharing my own story. I thought it would be great to create a space where others can share if they wish to do so too. So I kicked off this on Instagram only at the time, and I just asked my audience whether anybody would like to share their story. I'd probably share like one a month, then it became one a fortnight, then it became one a week, and things started growing momentum. Then a brilliant lady called Kaz approached me and said, I'd like to help you with this. And I was like, yes, please. And we started adding variety, because we knew that you may not want to read someone's story every time we post something like that. You may want to interact with the topic or understand a little bit more about it in different ways. So we started adding statistics to the grid. So every now and again we'd post a statistic. Then me and Kaz came up with a library of questions that we'd like to ask the audience to create discussion. So we added that in, and now we've added another piece in, and now we've added another piece in, and now we have an anonymous feature that people can use. And now and it just started to evolve into this platform of variety, inspiration, strength and courage. And then approximately 18 months ago, I thought to myself, you know what, we are sharing people's stories in written format. That's working brilliantly. Now what about video format? I thought I should kick off a YouTube channel, Something to Say YouTube channel, and invite people to share their stories in video format. Now that hits differently, because for somebody to sit opposite their mobile phone and record themselves actually telling their story in the time limit that we give, which is between 15 and 20 minutes, that is not easy for a million different reasons. Now, if you're watching this or you're listening along on your podcast app and you feel like you're somebody that would like to share in written format or via video format, please message me and we can organize that. Now, I just want this to continue growing. If you would like to support us, you can do that, because we need income to keep these platforms running. We have YouTube membership fees to pay. We have Stripe fees to pay. We have Photoshop fees to pay. We have video editing software fees to pay. If you would like to help us, you can do that at jeremyindica.com/donate. You can give us a one-off donation or become a monthly donor. Also on YouTube, we have recently kicked off the membership program, where we release videos 1 week early for members. We're also working very hard behind the scenes on membership only content. We of course have the merchandise, which is available at somethingtosayofficial.com, and we have a number of ideas in the pipeline. We're going to take this global. We're going to get this subject onto everybody's table, and Something to Say will be one of the vessels which we can do that with. So I hope this was okay with you. You know, I think just us reviewing these together is fantastic. I love that people comment on the video, sometimes more, sometimes less, but we get a conversation going there. Please do come forward and add those comments in the comment section, and let's just keep this momentum moving. Thank you.